This video is brought to you by the guitar Skyhook.
Hi there everyone and welcome to Artist Talks. Today my guest is an Englishman. He's a piano player, an artist in his own name, and he was one of the first members of the band Snarky Puppy. And his name is Bill Laurance, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to Denmark.
Thanks very much. It's good to be back. It's good to be back.
I've been looking into your career and it's a very exciting career. So I'd like to talk with you about your career.
Sure.
Yeah, because you started off as a kid playing, was it the piano you started?
I did. My first teacher was a ragtime player, and all I wanted to do was play ragtime. And then I did the grades, and I got a gig in a restaurant playing for people eating steak, and that's where I kind of
like a dinner.
Yeah, and I was forced to kind of have to learn lots of repertoire for that, and but also they'd come to eat a steak, but my challenge was to try and get them to listen as well. It was quite a nice gig to have. I was like 14 pretending to be 18, and then I went to uni and majored in composition, and then after university played in loads of bands and met Michael League of Snarky Puppy before Snarky Puppy existed, and he flew me over to the States for the first record, and then I've been going back and forth to the States ever since for the last 15 years. Really.
But what was your plan when you started out? When you were 14, going 18 and playing in bars, what were your dreams?
I think I always wanted to find my own voice. I knew there was a voice in there, and it's quite a arduous but cathartic process accessing it, and there was lots of work I'd done before my first official release of kind of searching for the sound that I thought was truly me. And then so I've always been driven by the kind of the search for a sound that I haven't heard before. And when I find that sound, it's the reason I get out of bed.
Yeah. And did you find the sound?
I think I did. I think with Flint. My first official record out in 2014 was when it was kind of the coming together of all the influences that I'd sort of soaked up over the years, and so there was lots of classical in there, but there was jazz and there was electronica and there was kind of groove and R&B and hip hop as well, and it was just kind of a melting pot of everything, all the music I've sort of come to love, rather than trying to sort of categorize myself specifically. It was hugely rewarding when I finally sort of found it, because I also put strings on it, and it's quite a sort of orchestral record as well, and quite cinematic and symphonic. So, but I'm always looking to try and transport the listener to a different place. I'm kind of into that idea of just if it doesn't take me somewhere else, then I haven't really done my job.
Okay. If we're going back, I forgot to ask you whether your parents played music or you've got some family playing music.
Sure. So my dad has got a mean whistle on him, but that's kind of about it. Although he always would play classical music at home. That was kind of what I was exposed to as a kid. But then my mum was a singer and used to sing in the local kind of band in the summertime in London Fields in Hackney. And I used to go around telling everyone my mum was on stage.
Yeah, you're proud.
Yeah.
Is she a good singer?
She's an amazing singer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm biased, because it's the voice I grew up on. But it's truly one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard.
So the voice you got inside might be a mixture of her voice and the whistle.
I think so. I think there's always been a musical sort of instinct from both my parents.
What type of music did your mom sing?
It was kind of like blues and soul, but also bits of folk as well. She knows loads of old folk songs. But I think that kind of that sense of rhythm was always there, and just a sort of appreciation of music was always kind of being encouraged, and I soaked it up.
So that's why maybe you started on the piano.
I think so. yeah, I mean, I think it was later, after doing the classical grades, that I discovered a real sort of joy in the freedom of improvisation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where things really opened up for me, in terms of being able to tell a story or just express myself. I think to have that kind of freedom. And now I'm trying to kind of marry the two. So I'm classically trained, but I try to improvise in a classical style, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately what the great composers were doing back in the day.
Yeah.
Beethoven was sort of famous for his improvisations, and I don't know. I find that kind of combination of improvisation within a sort of classical realm to be really interesting.
But was that before you decided to become a composer, or after?
I think at university I sort of got to a crossroads where it was either to choose performance or composition, and I asked myself, what distinguishes all the musicians I'd sort of come to love, and I realised it was their distinctive voice as artists, as composers, really, more than the way they played. I mean, they're both important, obviously, but I think, for me, I was always driven by the artistic pursuit of writing my own material, and then playing that material, in my way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I felt like composition was always the kind of guiding force, I suppose, and that then informed how I approach the playing of it.
Yeah. But then you ran into Michael. Is that around the time?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it was actually after I left Leeds University, and I was on a random gig in Bridlington in the north of England, and Mike was the bass player in this band. We just kind of hit it off, really. I was ready to leave the UK and spread my wings, and he was looking for a keyboard player, and he invited me to record the very first Snarky Puppy album, The Only Constant, in Dallas. And so I went there and did that, and then for the next 4 or 5 years we were touring.
What happened after the first album? Because it didn't take off like it did after 10 years. But what happened? Because you were able to tour after the album. Was that the album that lifted up that? Or
yes.
What happened?
We were touring very unglamorously.
Yeah.
For a good while.
Yeah.
Sleeping on sofas and playing house parties, and it was all quite tough. But I think really it was the kind of making of the band ultimately, and we really are truly a band of brothers. It does feel like we all sort of grew up together, and sharing in that experience of kind of roughing it was really important, and kind of informs the trust that we have now on stage, and I think nothing can really help a band better than just years spent on stage together. I mean, that's really
gives
all
you 10,000 hours
comes down
in
to,
a sense.
right?
Yeah.
And so every situation on stage, that we come across, we've probably come across before in some shape or form, so there's just this kind of wealth of experience as a band on stage,
But I grew up with band being like the Beatles, 4-man in a band, but Snarky Puppy is something else. Can you explain what is it? Because you're not 5 or 10 members, you're more like 40 or so.
Yeah. It's true, it's become a collective now, which is actually a really wonderful thing. I mean, everybody involved has a kind of common approach, I guess, and an openness and a lack of ego, and it's a really remarkable group to be a part of, because it's so welcoming, and it's of such a standard. Everybody's really pushing all the time, and nobody's complacent in their own playing or their own careers. But it was originally something that was born of necessity, whereby, there was a sort of core group, and then occasionally somebody couldn't make it, and we'd have to fly someone else in, or and so what initially was something that might be perceived to be a kind of difficulty ended up being the thing that kind of made it
at the end
able to survive, and also kind of an interesting part of it. So we'll do a tour, and then 2 or 3 weeks in, we'll reset some of the personnel and change up the keyboard, change up the guitar, change up the drummer, maybe change a horn and percussion, and then suddenly, the whole sort of feel changes, obviously, and yet we're still playing the same material.
We're still playing the same songs,
but the the kind of the interpretation is obviously completely different. So it keeps the material fresh.
Yeah.
And it means there's always somebody who can do the gig.
Yeah. But who writes the songs? You do, and Michael does.
Well, Michael League writes, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the songs,
and he's always there. Is he replaced? He's never replaced.
I mean, he's the true founder of Snarky. Yeah, he kind of started it all. But then we all write as well for the band and individually, and it's been great because it's opened the door for all of us to establish our own solo careers, and I think now everyone in the band has put out their own solo records. So it's cool, and it has totally opened the door, and it's been a wonderful thing to kind of work with those guys with my own compositions, and so my first record, Flint, featured Michael League on bass and Robert Sput-Seawright on drums, who were both Snarky, and then Michael Mars Maher on trumpet and Chris Bullock on sax also featured, and Zach Brock on violin
as well.
So it's a good cooperative to be a part of.
Yeah. So, but Snarky is an interesting thing as well, because you started out maybe 2002 or around there, and touring for, you said, 5 years. But what happened then? Because what I've heard, you kind of had a major breakthrough 10 years after you actually started.
Yeah.
What was happening for the first 10 years? You were touring?
I mean, so it was tough for the first period of time, and I know Michael League will be the first to admit that he had to invest year after year and kind of just keep going despite there being no. I mean, we were growing slowly, but for it to have been a sustainable thing was becoming more and more difficult, I think. And then we did a record called Tell Your Friends, where we just put together the elements that we knew were working. So we knew we played in a certain way in front of an audience, and we knew we wanted to get a studio quality recording.
Yeah.
So Michael decided to put those two elements together, and we recorded a live record in a studio with an audience. Everybody on headphones, and put it on, made a video of it, and then put that on YouTube, and thanks to YouTube and Facebook, suddenly people started kind of sharing it, and then all of a sudden, we were getting requests to play all over the world, really, and our first gig out of the North America was in London, and then that was kind of the beginning of opening up Europe and
was it thanks to you that you had a gig in London? Or?
Well, Mike did come to visit me, and we were we'd gone to a sort of I think it was a Jamiroquai. It was the rhythm section of Jamiroquai, some gig, and then a couple of guys recognised us in the queue while we were in London, and then said, "Oh, you should come and do a clinic at our school." And then this guy Attar Shafigian, who works at the Institute in London, sorted out this gig, our first gig in London, in Shoreditch, and then it's just kind of snowballed from there gradually. I mean, it's been a long road, and it's funny the way it's kind of now become what it is. I mean, it's an amazing thing to go from South Korea to Chile and feel the same kind of energy and hunger for live instrumental improvised music. I mean, it's really I mean, there's nothing quite more inspiring to witness firsthand that kind of appetite for that music across the globe. That's been amazing to witness.
Because it's instrumental. There's sometimes you shout a bit out to the people and make them not sing along in words, but just sing along with the tunes.
I think that was the thing for us was, with when people were singing the melodies, we couldn't really believe it because there weren't any lyrics, but people were just singing them anyway. You know, and it was like, well, you don't necessarily always need the lyric for people to sing along like it's a kind of pop gig,
But that must mean that the records means something to people, or the YouTube stuff or something, because they actually listen to it and learn the song because they recognize it when you play it. You just start on the piano or Rhodes, and then people go berserk. I've seen.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
But I think you're kind of a new generation in the music business, being kind of made by YouTube, like Justin Bieber or maybe Wolfpack or stuff like that. There's some new artist who's actually not going through the major labels at first, but making the audience through video clips where they play like hell.
I think so.
Is that the way it went with you?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a lot of talk about the industry. It's harder than ever to kind of sell a record now. Everybody's streaming, and the internet has changed that. And while that's true, there's at the same time it's enabled anybody to record something in their bedroom, like Jacob Collier. And suddenly win 4 Grammys, and like you can do it if you have interesting enough ideas, I think, and good enough music, and it is a kind of open forum now. There's I think the internet has really opened it up, and it's about how you utilize that as an advantage. I think Snarky have been really clever about in how they manage that.
But is it the cooperative that's actually doing that? Do you do it all, or is it Michael that's running all the stuff as well? Is it an office?
Yeah, so Michael is he's the musical director. It's his it's his baby ultimately. But I think it's also a shared responsibility in terms of the the music and the representation of the music and the kind of ethos of the band. Like Mike is always very quick to make sure that we're all happy because we all roughed it for a long time. And it was kind of his vision, but now the vision has kind of, the fact that it's been realized by all these guys, we're all in it together. It's a special chemistry.
We'll have a short break and we'll be back with the talk about Bill's own career.
A skyhook is a new and discreet way to hang your guitar on a wall. Use the strap button on the back of the guitar. If you don't have one on your guitar yet, the skyhook comes with one for you to mount. Find more information on the website skyhook.dk.
All right, we are back with Bill Laurance, and now I'd like to talk a bit about his own musical career, because you're out and out with a trio. When did you start touring yourself?
So I guess my first tour was after the release of Flint in 2014, and we did a tour to support that with a string quartet. And yeah, I've kind of been touring ever since in different arrangements. Then I did a tour with a string trio from Holland and Mike and Sput on bass and drums, and then a French horn player called Katie Christie. And then more recently I've just done a sort of solo tour where I've been just touring on my own with a whole sort of box of electronics and keyboards, which was really fun. I did a tour of the States actually just on my own, like on a road trip,
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It's nice to have a variety of different projects and things that I tour. So, and I find each one will inform the other, but each one is quite a sort of different project. So it's nice to have that variety.
Yeah. You started writing music during the Snarky period, I guess. After you had the education, there was nothing from that period that you play. It's recent stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of working on the material for Flint for a long time before, and I'd gone through different iterations in the past, and I'd actually made 3 records before I arrived at Flint.
I've never heard of those records.
No, it's because
Flint is the first one, isn't it?
Flint's the first one.
So the 3 ones, what's about them?
The 3 ones before are, they never saw the light of day, because they were kind of part of the process of arriving at Flint, and I always, when I'm doing clinics or anything, I kind of emphasize the significance of that process and how, I had to go through those 3 records to kind of arrive at the first one I was happy to release. And, it's about perseverance, I guess, finding that sound and finding the voice that is truly you.
How do you decide? Is that your stomach? How do you feel whether it's okay, it's the right thing?
Yeah, I think it is a stomach thing. I think, I when I first heard the strings being recorded on Flint, it was a real kind of cathartic moment, that I'd been waiting for about 10 years, really, of just feeling like this is an interesting sound, and this is a sound I've been looking for, and I feel like I really felt like I'd found it. And, and so I think, it's kind of like any sort of instinctive feeling, I think, if it's strong enough, then you should trust it.
Do you write the arrangements for the strings yourself? Did you learn that, and do you do it, or do you record in Logic and just print out what you recorded?
Yeah, so I do it in Logic, and then Michael League did the arrangements for Flint and Swift for those 2 albums. I try to kind of arrange it with as much detail as I can within the software, and then I find orchestration is obviously a whole other skill, and I've done bits of it, but these days I've worked with the WDR, and I was doing arrangements with them, and I started speaking with somebody who understands the WDR and how they play, and it's like, well, I'm going to give that responsibility to you, because you know how you're going to make this sound the best, So I think it's delegating is can be important, as much as all the composers before us did it all, and it's like we sort of get lazy, I guess.
Well, you use your time on what you're good at and leaving other stuff to other people who are better.
That's right.
At it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's it, and I think that's an important thing to do.
Is that what you do in Snarky as well, with the material? Is it also on notes? I heard Michael once said that all the musicians learns all the parts, because you'll never know what to play.
That's right. Yeah, we try to get it all down, so that in the rehearsal process we can just swap around as and when, and it's a kind of much more seamless kind of process in terms of realizing the arrangement. And it's effective. It means that we can try things out super quick and A and B different ideas and see what sits. But as I say, I mean, we've played together for so long, it's almost like we're all going to know what's more likely to work at this point, because we've been down so many different creative.
But how many songs do you have in Snarky?
In Snarky, we have I think 11 albums, maybe. No. I think there's 13 albums. So it's a lot of clubs.
And you know them all?
Yeah. We don't play all of them live. It's but yeah, I'd say most of the guys know most of them, I think. Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot, yeah.
If you play it enough times, then it kind of goes in.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I could do the bass line on the stuff I played bass line on, but I couldn't just play the guitar or the keyboards or sing all the harmonies.
Oh, I see. Well, I couldn't play the drums for us.
No.
I leave that to those guys.
No, but you play.
But I try to kind of know all the parts within the songs, so that we can, shift them around.
What do you do in the trio now? Because it's you do piano. and
Yeah.
some keyboards.
Yeah, so I run. I mean, it's tricky when you're touring and you kind of, I'm trying to have portable stuff. So I use a lot of boutique Roland stuff because it's really nice and portable and it sounds great. And I run that through a MIDI keyboard on top of the piano that I put through a bunch of different effects as well. So I can, so you have the kind of acoustic piano, but then also be able to access, the more sort of space age world.
Yeah. Because it's a mixture you do. It's not just piano. Because some things sounds like classical jazz on the piano, like a trio with double bass and drums, and it goes in another direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that wide spectrum that I find interesting. Like I love jazz, but I love electronica as well, and I'm trying to kind of see where they might cross over. And as I say, I think that variety keeps me interested and keeps the gig interesting. I think it's when we kind of cover a wide spectrum of stuff, and really kind of committing to each aesthetic.
Yeah. So, but you don't change lines in your band? Because you're only a trio. Or...
Yeah, well actually, I mean, so Jonathan Harvey, my bass player, he's often playing a lot of the melodic stuff.
On the bass?
On the bass, yeah. And vice versa, I play lots of the bass lines when he's often playing chords as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we've gone into detail about how to realise the more electronic side of things. So Marius Alexa, my drummer, is running a Korg Volker drum machine, and he kind of sets that off and then is improvising with that, which is cool. So yeah, there's, we're always trying to see how technology can expand the creative horizons.
Yeah. But how about people are talking about maybe we should go into the more nerdy stuff in a little while then, because that'd be a nerdy stuff thing talking about.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think I'll say thank you for the talk about your career right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that was all for the talk about Bill Laurance's career as a musician. Stay tuned for Artist Talks Nerd Alert. And thank you so much for watching, and thank you Skyhook for the support. And remember to listen to other people's stories. You might learn something new. See you.